Well, good day and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. My goodness, it's been almost a whole year since the world was a witness to the murder and some say the lynching by knee of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer by the name of Derek Chauvin. A whole year, a whole year of protests, a whole year of waves of calls for justice. My goodness, it was something, and it still is. Um, in the wake of this, a new committee was formed. A new committee by the name of the George Floyd Justice Committee. In the spirit of protest, in the spirit of protest and justice. And I have the chairman of the George Floyd Billboard Committee. I want to get that out there. The George Floyd Billboard Committee. Now, when you think of a billboard, what do you think of? And when you think of that image, what do you think of? In that spirit, I want to welcome the chairman, Corinne Basabe, the chairman of the George Floyd Justice Billboard Committee. I hope I'm saying this right, Corinne. I know you're going to correct me, but I want to thank you for Mental Health and You, being a part of Mental Health and You today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So to get started, I just, can you explain how did it come about? Of all types of protests, of all types of waves of justice, calls, what was it that, how did this come about?
As you know, I'm in the field of the arts, and I built a life around being an artist and being in the arts. And this project came about because I'm also part of a group that communicates by email, basically comprised of people in the arts community, filmmakers, former gallerists, art critics, artists, just a very diverse group of people. The conversation, in the middle of the pandemic, the conversation came up about possibly blending art and activism in response to what was going on with George Floyd and the protests. And, it was a high fever pitch in the country.
Yes.
And we were all feeling it. So the idea came up about possibly doing a billboard of the murder of George Floyd. In the committee, an exhibit had just occurred in July, upstate New York, which featured a painting by Don Floyd. Basically, he had seen the video and saw what happened to George Floyd, and he kind of repositioned the characters, but basically he reimagined the murder of George Floyd in a painting, which I thought really captured the spirit, international feeling and of disgust and horror that was out there. And so basically from that moment, from July, August, September, a committee was formed. I was chosen as the chair for New York, and we just struggled and tried to get a billboard up, and we got our first billboard up in Times Square. I do have to mention that this was in an arbitrary painting by Don Perlis. He had been kind of chronicling acts of injustice against Black people, particularly in New York, for like 30 years. He painted about the Central Park Five, the issue with Bernadette Goetz, the Howard Beach, the Eleanor bumper. So and just poverty, just homelessness, of paintings of Black men sleeping on benches in subways. He had his eye on this anyway. So of
Okay.
course he painted George Floyd as well.
Interesting. But in that spirit, why now though? Why George Floyd? What was it about that murder? What was it? Was it, what was it about that lynching by knee, as some would say?
I think we were all
at this time, in this moment.
I think because it became an international
Yes.
symbol of injustice, and we were all feeling vulnerable anyway because of the pandemic, and particularly
Yes.
as Black people when we were down, and with higher rates affected by COVID-19, so we were really vulnerable and down, and had seen if the other shootings didn't happen before that, maybe it wouldn't have been as traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
But George Floyd shooting happened, and whether it was in New Zealand, South America, Nigeria, Japan, all over the world, people rose up and saw it as just a symbol of just inhumanity, just inhumanity. And so it's a historical moment. It's a historical image, and it was important. It's iconic, that image.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that 8 minutes and 46 seconds, see it into the brain cells of so many. Thank God, thanks to a cell phone taken by a 17-year-old. And it says something about I think about the age that we're in now, where our brutality, our lynching is being televised. It is being seen by so many across the world.
And I think because
it's a very interesting time.
I think the pandemic also, I think technology has helped us because basically in my lifetime, and even in the 60s, 50s, there had been acts of brutality against Black people. That's why the Black Panthers took the stance that they took, because that's what was happening in LA. But I think because of technology, the cell phones, that helped. But even with that, the shootings continue. But I think that the pandemic changed things in that white people, Asian people were at home, and people were vulnerable, and so they had to absorb what was going on in the media. So unlike the other times where Black people protested alone, the people joined in and finally understood what Black people were feeling and thinking. They were forced to sit there and watch that 8 minutes too. The pandemic made everybody more sensitive, more empathetic, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It was almost like as if it was a captive audience. You're in your home. You can't just turn it off. You're in your home. You're watching this. It's on every station. It's on social media. Played an important part as well. It's all on social media. It's all on the news. It's in the papers. So absolutely, you're absolutely right. But I want to get back to this billboard. Of all the places to display such an image, why a billboard? What did that symbolize?
I think I do want to piggyback on what you said about social media. The social media aspect was key. That linked people all over the world, and that was a constant flow of reactions, and it allowed people to participate and voice their anger. But the billboard, I thought, was very important in that I noticed that over a period of months, the temperature of that movement and protest seemed to cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to keep it front and center, even though I'm very proud as an artist that we got out there and, artists were painting murals and portraits of Floyd. I thought that billboard was really important in keeping what happened front and center and not prettying it up, keeping it raw and forcing people to feel and deal with the horror of what happened, and also
it also forces people to look at it, Corinne. Not everybody may not be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Some people may not even have a cable. But a whole lot of people, they can walk past a billboard. They can ride past a bill. It's in your face. It's underneath a highway. It's over a highway, near a bridge, wherever. You know?
But I know the trial is on today, and the temperature is starting to rise again. But I really did feel that it was, we're in an information age where we get bites of information so quickly. Things come in the past. Like, nobody's talking about Philando Castile anymore, even though that was as horrible as George Floyd. And so, keeping something front and center and making people be uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's okay that you're uncomfortable. You should be uncomfortable. You should be upset. You should be horrified.
We talk in peer support about being able to sit in your discomfort. So if one can see a billboard with such a graphic image, if one can see, just on a regular day when you think you're in the park or whatever, such a graphic, it's going to make you think. Whether you want to or not, it's going to make you think about the situation, and maybe it can help start a conversation, an uncomfortable one, but maybe it can help you start a conversation about race and injustice in this country. Corinne, as we're going to go to a PSA, but when we come back, I want to talk about perhaps some of the barriers that you face, that the committee face in getting billboard space. And where are you planning to go from here? What plans? So we're going to go to a break, Mental Health and You, and we'll be back shortly. Further discussion. Well, good day and welcome back to Mental Health and You. We're in the midst of the discussion concerning the Billboard Committee, chairman by our guest. And I bring her back, Corinne, my bad. Corinne Basabe, right?
Yes, Corinne Basabe, yes.
Basabe. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of Mental Health and You. And Corinne, as we were heading off the break, that PSA is so hot and so important. I hope everyone takes notice of that. As we were heading off the break, we were discussing. Go ahead.
Yeah, referring to the PSA, it's really about being George Floyd's voice.
Yes. And you played a part in it. Didn't you play a part in getting it together? You made it yourself?
Well, we started creating stickers so that people could put stickers on their hat, their bags, their gear, wherever they feel like they want to, the refrigerator door, so that people can see where their head is at.
Also, stickers, all of that, posters, whatever it may be, billboards, it forces you to confront it as well. Every time you think you want to turn it off, it's there. It is there. Like race is there. And I dare say it will force a conversation a long needed conversation of race in this country, racism. And speaking of such, what was some of the barriers, if any? I mean, you're talking about billboard space. What was some of the barriers that you face, if any, in getting the billboard displayed in the various places it has been? And can you talk about these places and why you chose some of these cities?
Well, the main barrier that we had was trying to get a billboard in Minneapolis because of how explosive the protests were last year. We were censored, and another billboard company had intervened on our behalf and helped us. We couldn't get a full billboard the way we did in other cities, but we got one for 3 days on a digital billboard that I think the image would flash for 8 seconds and then it would be replaced by other images. But we got that for 3 days at least. But definitely, I felt like there was some kind of censorship happening from the higher ups because other billboard companies refused the image, rejected the image.
Really?
Yes.
What excuses, what reasons did they give?
I think they said that it was violent.
Oh, violent.
And we also were exploring putting billboards on. We had a broker trying to get billboards in London, and that the image was rejected by companies saying that it was violent as well.
Wow. But you prevailed just the same. So what can you run down the cities that the billboard can be seen in?
Well, the billboards are all down already. It's almost a shame because the trial is actually happening now. I wish we had a billboard up now that the trial is going on.
Yes, folks, as we're taping this show, the day is the first day of the trial. And so it remains there. So we may need some more billboards.
Well,
billboards, yes.
Up to the public, really, because we had a billboard in Times Square, New York. We had one in West Hollywood, California. We had one in Atlanta, Georgia. We had one, I guess, for 3 days in Minneapolis. I feel like I'm missing one. We had 5. New York. Oh, Washington, D.C. was the biggest billboard. That one was huge and could be seen by the Capitol. And that one was really significant because we put that one up like 2 weeks after that Capitol Hill insurrection.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
It was up.
That was interesting. That was interesting and really interesting timing. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Some of the billboards overlapped with each other. At that time, Georgia was up, LA was up, and DC was up for about the same time for about 2 weeks. They overlapped.
Wow. So what has been the response? What has been the response to the billboards, either from public or from officials, or what has been the response? Online, social media?
And it's been predominantly positive, but I did get a few trolls on Facebook and Instagram that would message me, and I think one of them had a valid point that I think it's really going to inform my decisions in the future. One person didn't like it in the Black community because, I said that's really not the audience. The audience is really the wider population to get people to, seek justice for Floyd. But one person felt that it doesn't really belong in the Black community because it re-traumatizes people. I don't feel traumatized by that image because for me, it's letting out my rage because it's, but I respect other people's opinions and not everybody's the same. We live in New York, which is a tough, gritty city. Not everybody lives in this environment. So, whatever she was feeling could be valid.
Well, that's understandable. But I think in my introduction, I talked about just watching it that image, just looking at it again, talking about its trauma, its post-traumatic stress, its anxiety. It's the example of what we as people face every day in this country.
I thought it was the truth. I think it's the truth.
Right.
I feel that the image is truthful. A beautiful portrait of Floyd with flowers does nothing for me.
No.
I feel more helpless sitting having that image not dealt with than seeing the image, knowing that I'm fighting with that image. It's like a weapon. I weaponize the image on billboards.
Absolutely. So going forward, what's the plans for the committee? I mean, any other images? Any more plans to display?
I think
how do you see this going forward?
I think that fundraising is so overwhelming. It's such a difficult thing trying to get these. The New York billboard was a little bit easier to negotiate because Times Square was empty. The other billboards was a little bit more tricky. I mean, financially, it's definitely something that takes an enormous amount. We try to fundraise a lot from GoFundMe and also private donors. So that really informs where and when we put a billboard up. So, I mean, there are other ideas in the works, but it's really a financial, it depends on financial resources. We're also starting to look at, there is conversations in terms of injustice is injustice, regardless of race. What's going on with the Asian American community is something that really disturbs me right now as well. So, just talk about that in terms of future, I guess, art and activism.
Do you see any type of partnership between the Asian community and what you're doing in your committee?
Absolutely. I think it would be a great idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there is a history of partnerships there. There is a history there that, people need to know about, I think, even more in the midst of everything. Because as you're, as next to the picture, justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, said Dr. King. So absolutely. So if we're not safe, if we don't feel secure, if our Asian brothers are not safe, if they and sisters are not safe, they don't feel secure, then no one is. Then no one is. Because we're just as American, we're just as part of the fabric of this country as anyone. Yes, it's traumatizing, it's hard, but so is racism. So is racism. And Corinne, you talked about the image. I want to just as we start to wrap up, I want to discuss just the image, the power of the image. We're both artists. So of course, I think about when I think about the history of the image in our community as a form of protest, going back to when Emmett Till's mother made that decision to display his mutilated body in the casket. That was such a powerful thing. That was, and it 1955. All the pictures we've seen, and what that made you feel like. So this committee is in the spirit of that. This committee is in the spirit of protest, in the spirit of justice. And that's what the image, the picture, the motion picture, the picture, whether it's still or film, has always been a part of our community, a way to tell our stories when no one else would. So absolutely, absolutely. So yes, absolutely. So be that as it may, we got 5 minutes. What is it that you would want us to know about this committee, perhaps we didn't touch upon, about your purpose, your reason for wanting to be a part of it? Yes, you say you're an artist and everything, but there's a whole lot of artists making flowers and everything, and we need that. But what was it that seared into your brain the need to be a part of this?
Well, during the pandemic, as a Black woman from the diaspora, I cried when I saw Floyd's death. To me, it was like, it made everything what was happening worse. And I think that there was a layer of could be depression, sadness that was hanging on me. Everything was so heavy for weeks. During quarantine, I was walking around my house wearing a pair of overalls for weeks. It was ridiculous. And I think that it was very therapeutic for me because I didn't realize how much rage I had buried down deep. And I only recently realized that it was rage that I've been holding on to. And so I think when I saw the painting and they brought this idea to me, it made me feel less helpless.
Absolutely.
I felt empowered.
Well, that's what art can do. Art is a way how we communicate. Art is a form of protest. It's also a form to help us. We help others. There's a voice for others, but this is also a voice for us. It helps us. It's therapy for the soul. It's therapy for the mind, for the heart. And absolutely. So as we start to wrap up, Corinne, I want to thank you again. I want to thank you again for being part of Mental Health and You, for talking about and sharing with us the reasons and the passions behind the George Floyd Billboard Committee and some of your plans for the future. And we wish you all the best. And we'll be watching you.
Thank you.
You're absolutely. We'll be on the lookout. So they can reach you on social media, right?
After all the trolling, please, I don't think I want any social media. But definitely that, my email address is up there. Definitely give us a shout out, or download a sticker from the website and wear it on your clothing, your bag. Definitely try to support and be Floyd's voice.
Absolutely. Be Floyd's voice. Absolutely. So from me to you, from my guest, from Bronxnet, this has been Mental Health and You. Thank you. Peace and blessings. And find your voice, wherever it may be. God bless.